Fabulous, fabulous. 7 o'clock on the mark, call it to order. Want to hit a roll call?
Yes, sir.
Oh, somebody's on mute.
Okay, so we know that works. Yeah, it's 7 o'clock and call to order. Valerie Renthaler.
Here.
Matt Castillo.
Present.
Andrea Tilla.
Here.
And Deb Cassini Klein.
Here.
And Vice President Law.
Here.
And Mr. President.
Still here.
And the mayor is here as well.
Here.
Online at this moment. I do not see any attendees. Ms. Burchett Williams yet, but she will be joining us here shortly.
See if she.
Hi, Danny.
Hi, Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hey, everybody.
It looks like he is.
She was cross-checking.
All right, we got 2 attendees in the space right now, right? Let's hit straight into public comments. See if anybody's got it.
So raise your hand if you're online, and you'd like to speak, and we'll promote you to a panelist.
Give a couple extra seconds, and we got Bob and Collins on. So, you guys want to pop on over? If not, we can close up public comments. Seeing none, I suppose we will close public comments.
Excuse me, I'm having a hard time hearing.
So speak directly to the owl. Does that help?
Yeah,
You know-
raise your voice.
That's better.
This is about as direct as I'm coming today. So
Sometimes I have it turning this way, and that doesn't help because that's where.
I stare eye to eye with the owl as we speak. We look right at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Created a lane.
Like an echo chamber
Yes.
between me and the owl. Are we better? Yay, nay? All right, I'll take it. All right, here, no public comment. We will close public comment, move into discussion items. Starting with any questions on minutes is basically how it lists out. Everybody's pretty quiet there. I'll take that as a no. We can roll through any reports, questions. I mean, I will tell you now that I don't always love the structure of this for workshops, because I think it doesn't always let us be as kind of free flowing as I would like. Just as an FYI, not to you, but more to me. So I will open and kind of roll through this, but if there's anything that we have on 4 that people want to discuss, starting with borough manager, we'll start there and then we'll move our way around.
Well, I can't stress enough, please look at our staff reports. Michelle, Ashley, the other ones will be moving up. Dennis puts a ton of time into his report. You know, the highlights are mine. We've got a building project we've got to get going. We've done a lot on EV charging stations, which will, you know, Michelle certainly can answer questions on that. Budget is in full gear. If you haven't looked at the draft budgets, get your head around that, because we want to be done with our work kind of like October, so the public in November, December can look and you can vote in December. But as Michelle, Dennis, certainly as you guys think about what reports you have, go ahead and share your highlights, if you will.
That's to
Sure.
you all. Floor is yours,
Yeah.
Michelle.
Yeah, I can go ahead. Yeah, just echoing what Alex said, look to the staff report that I produced, just to make note of the 2024 budget draft that I've worked on. So this is the second draft that is now presented to council. It does have 2 lines that I have presented to council. One does include possible new addition of a public service coordinator, like a second Ralph person. And with that, you would see a possible tax increase needed. So just, you know, kind of bring your attention to that. There also is some work that I've been doing extensively with EV chargers. So that is in progress and moving forward as well. If you have any questions with budget, you know, Alex and myself are always available, so don't hesitate to reach out once you explore that second draft budget that was in your binder.
Very soon, Michelle and I will give you our office hours where we're gonna sit here. And whether you come or not, we'll be ready. And you can just drop in, like say 3 hours on a Thursday or on a Friday, you can drop in and one-on-one, get any question you have with the budget answered. You don't need to schedule, we'll just tell you the hours. If you do tell us, that'd be helpful, because then we'll be able to coordinate. And we won't violate any sunshine rules, but it'll give you a chance to really drill down into the budget and kind of get the questions you might have one-on-one without having the formality of emails or something else.
Excellent. That sounds.
Thank you very much. That's
Very good.
that's
Yeah,
very
it's really
helpful. Thank you.
You know, and for reality, I make the assumption that people, particularly on the budget items as we move forward, that we have it in our packet. If you don't have questions, you mean you reviewed it, you're comfortable with it.
Sure.
I've talked to Ralph already about the position. I understand what the implications are. I assume that if people have not, that if they have questions, that they're bringing questions forward. And if they're not bringing questions forward, that they're comfortable with kind of where it is.
I would really encourage you to do what you've just done, everyone, right, Ralph? All of us are here for you. So don't like let it wait till the last minute if you have concerns, questions about nuances of budget or what that position would actually be doing and what his opinion is. He'll give it to you. We're not like on different pages. We're trying to be on the same page.
And sort of pause for a second there. Do folks have questions about that, about the additional position, what that, the implications are on the budget? Because there are, it's a real implication on the budget.
100%.
Have folks had the chance to review it? Am I missing anything?
I
Yeah, and I wanna-
haven't had a chance to review it yet.
Well, I would just say that the Public Safety Committee is recommending this position. And that's after a lot of conversation in our committee meeting about the need for this position.
The whole totality of what's gonna happen, yeah.
I did want to bring up some stuff and we can speak about it in the management and government.
With regard to that position, or?
Correct.
I mean, it's all flows right together. It's right after the other. So if you want to bring it, we can talk about it right now.
Oh, yeah, and that's great. I personally think that this position could be a part-time position right now, which would then not cause a tax increase for this budget year. See how that position goes part-time. I hear that this other person can also get other part-time hours filled for a full-time position within another borough, which would be great to work with the other borough, which we already do. So I think that's also an option as well. See how that is for a couple of years. And then we can hire them full-time if needed, or hire an additional person or whatever the case may be.
So what would be the downside of that? I mean, when you only have a part, I mean, obviously the upside is the financial burden, but what's the downside of just having? a
Well, as far
I think
as,
that's a great Ralph question.
Right, I mean, I think he would know better than.
Yeah, he would know
anybody,
better than anybody.
Because he may not, he might have X, Y, and Z that we didn't even think about.
Absolutely.
But I think that's a good suggestion.
Well, I think part of that though, in discussing with Ralph, and I don't want to speak
No,
out of
go
turn from the committee, because I'm
No,
not
go ahead.
on it. I just
Go ahead.
kind of had my own conversation with him.
yeah,
You know, we are talking about more than a code space, more than someone who's going to help with public works, also someone who's going to help with the fire department.
Right,
So I think, one of the things that I asked of Ralph was to provide that job description that was kind of comprehensive, so that we can understand a little better what the space is,
Absolutely.
right? Assuming from the conversation that I had that it is a full-time position based on the amount of the job
Work.
description, which I have not, if you sent it, I haven't had a chance to review it, just to be clear, but I haven't seen it. But I've spent the last week and a half, under a rock somewhere.
Yeah.
So assuming that he comes through with what he was talking about in terms of the job description itself, it would appear that it's a full-time job. If that's not the case, if we're looking at only partial of the job description, that's a different space, which I think fits more to what you're saying, Valerie.
Yeah.
But if it is a more comprehensive, robust position that encompasses all three of the roles that he's talking about, I'm not really sure how that works its way to a part-time position. Not that it can't, just saying from my viewpoint, I'm not
I
sure.
mean, it's a big job. It's not just one thing, it's this.
well, I think that the
The-
issue for us, again, in public safety, the issue for us was based on public safety. And part of the problem has been that across the borough, it is evident that we have had problems with code.
Right.
And that impacts safety. When walls are falling down, when decks are falling down, when all of that, that's a public safety issue. That's point number one. Point number two is that we have to face the reality that at some point, this person who holds our borough together physically might need to go off and do something else. We all know how long he's been doing this,
Yes,
and
that
he
was
knows every square inch of the borough.
Mhm.
It's going to take someone some time
To
to
wrap
be
that.
able to grasp all of that. That's point number two. Point number three is everybody knows we are having great difficulty along with everybody else, recruiting firefighters. We have a big issue during the day now because there are people who are moving who've been able to cover that position, and now that's not the case. So that is a big concern. So it's like those three prongs. I don't know if the person he has in mind is willing to do part-time, do you know?
Yes.
He is willing to do
Yes.
part-time. Okay, so then let me ask the next question. If we would have him part-time this year and then move him to next year, we'd be facing the same dilemma, right?
We don't know.
Well, I would hope that we would get a full police complement next year, which
Yeah.
is 2 positions.
Yes.
What is the title of this position so that people out there?
Public safety specialist. I'm gonna send you here the job description, just to be clear. You know, I mentioned being done November 1, so you have 60 days to talk, to think,
Yeah.
to noodle, to meet, to discuss, to
Mhm.
break down. So we're not in this meeting trying to
Yeah.
jump something on you that you're
Yeah.
running on tonight, so.
Yeah.
We just finished the job description last Wednesday, and I'll share it to you. It'll be in the binder for the regular meeting, but
Okay,
the public service, it's called public safety specialist. So I always believe you need the title jobs of what their outcome to be. So public safety is the key.
it sure is.
Code enforcement, whether it's preventative with fire or code enforcement, the property maintenance code BIU work that they do, the code enforcement BIU work that is the occupancy inspections, all of those would be brought under this position. And then we would require they have a certain fire certification to be able to get a vehicle or firefighter 1, firefighter 2 to be able to be on a vehicle. The department, to avoid scratching calls, likes to have 4 people on a call. And one of the 4 is moving to another part of the state, is the president of the fire company. So won't be able to make calls. They might be able to help out on meeting work as president from that part of the state, but certainly won't be able to answer calls. So we're getting to the point where we have to be really thoughtful about, in the near term, being able to not scratch calls. The part-time position we've been talking about would be shared with the one community that we already run the same card. In the fire world, when there's a dispatch, whoever's in that area gets called. We've merged functionally our calls with, I'm not sure if it's Wilkins 3 or Wilkins 2, but whatever it is, there's a fire company down in Turtle Creek area, down on Railroad Street. That's a Wilkins Township that we have the same run card. So whatever call comes into them, we get dispatched. Whatever call comes into us, they get dispatched. So we don't scratch a call. The part-time we've been talking about was possibly it'd be a shared position with Wilkins, where they would, or we would hire them full-time, they would, or we would pay half that salary. And when they're in that community, they would dispatch with that fire company. And when they're in our community, they would dispatch with our company. Meanwhile, they would be doing the same kind of thing, occupancy inspections, proactive property maintenance, but the public safety is the key, right? The public safety, you know, the normal term is code enforcement officer. And that sounds so not friendly. We like our staff to be friendly, and we want them to be proactive about the mission of safety, you know, protecting people and property. So that's sort of how we're going.
So let me just clarify a couple things if I can, based on both conversation and the concern that I have. So the concern that I have is anytime that we're looking at kind of a long-term space to try and address something and you put yourself in a part-time position, you're really not long-term planning, you're rolling the dice between us and if they have another part-time space, between us and the other part-time space, for instance. The resolution to that, though, which makes sense if I'm following it, is if we're hiring them part-time or full-time rather, and then essentially leasing services to another borough. Having said that, we're still budgeting then on a full-time position. Now, the fact that on the other side, we have revenue to address half of that full-time position, I understand. But in terms of our primary budgeting, right, our expenses don't change. What changes is a risk over the long period of time that even in year 2, to your point before, Valerie, we don't know if they'll continue that
Right.
part-time, right? What I have no problem, and it makes perfect sense to me to hire somebody full-time with a willingness to contract out part of their services to another municipality. I don't think it's in our best interest to do the reverse, right? To have
Right.
somebody else hire them
Right.
full-time and contract their services out to us, because then they're their full-time employee.
We've been down that road.
Right, the other thing that I would say to that end is that if we are in fact hiring them full-time, right, we do so with the understanding that our budget on the revenue side may or may not exist past whatever the contract we have, right? So if we do a 1-year contract with Wilkins on this, then we have to expect that the next year, we're paying full salary for that person irrespective, which means to, I think Diane's prior point, what does it look like a year from now? In your point of we don't know, right? What we would know is that our expenses would remain the same irrespective, right? And so that gives us a full-time employee irrespective of what we do with contract services on the way out. So if I'm following, and if I'm not, feel free to tell me I'm not, right? But if I'm following it correctly, the ideal space to me seems that we hire somebody full-time. If we're able to contract out for, half of the services, fantastic, right? Because gives us some time to feel it out, see how it goes, see what their strengths and weaknesses are. But there's no guarantee on revenue past that. And we definitely, and this is the one part that I'm still a little confused on, is if I'm understanding it from the conversation with Ralph, part of what we're trying to do is bring somebody in who has skills enough now that we're not like bringing in a basic level,
Right.
that can learn under him our borough, right?
Yep.
So making sure that we have somebody in that position and not someone who's in a position of like, I work for Churchill and I work for Wilkins, or I work for Churchill and I work for someone else. That's a different makeup to me. If I'm wrong, let me know, but that seems to be the difference. And it seems to be why I would want them full-time, even if contracted out as a part-time to Wilkins, if that makes sense. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Another point to that is, this person should be, in my thinking, groomed to step up.
That's it.
When-
That's
Ralph-
exactly it.
Ralph
is
will
not gonna
will
be here
retire,
forever.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
that's
and
what
that's
it is.
that part of
That's-
being kind of full-time
So,
here versus.
full-time, like, I got
think-
some goal ahead of me.
Right.
Mhm.
I think it would be helpful while we're evaluating all this, then, Alex, if you can send out Ralph's job description as well. So we can understand
Yeah,
what his
so-
responsibilities are. And then I guess my follow-up question would be, I mean, it sounds like we're talking about a person that would be a paid firefighter as well.
No, we only have volunteers, but we have to have
There you go.
coverage during the day.
But if we're requiring them to have certain certifications for the job that are fire
Well,
related, does
in a
that put us
sense,
into
he is.
does that put us into a situation where now we have to carry additional insurances and other things because they are a paid firefighter, or give us liability or risk? And has
Well,
anyone gone with Gavin on
We
that
have a
yet?
person who's leading the community who filled this responsibility.
And I'm
So-
glad you raised the question, because Turtle Creek's gonna have in a couple,
Yes,
about a month, a meeting about fire. But now, so yeah, one of the things to look at is the Swiss Val, Dormont, and others model, where they have a volunteer company and a paid.
And paid
during
per,
But
the
their
office hours. firefighters.
but they're paid firefighters.
Yeah,
So that
but
makes a
yes.
difference in your
Believe me.
insurances,
liability, yeah.
your
Very much.
liabilities, the coverage you have to offer them for healthcare and other things.
Yeah, so,
So the budget you're looking at may not be adequate if that's
A
part of
$1 billion
what we're
decision.
talking
no,
about.
believe me, we've got the budget right. I understand what you're saying, but we look at it as $100,000 a year additional expense, no matter what. That's just what it is. And if you look at all of our employees, that's kind of a good way to gauge the average of all of us. Because you have benefits and whatever that
Even
starting
workers'
wage
comp, I
is.
mean, like, that's a huge workers' comp expense.
So that's a good point. And
So I
again,
think those are some
where we're
things we
at
need to
in
understand the risk of
process.
before we can make a decision.
Again,
so
where you're at
let's-
in the process is you're like step one of this 10 steps to get to where
Right.
you need to be comfortable to vote in December.
Correct.
Because that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting for a budget adoption that would include whatever, part-time, full-time, or none in the 2024 budget. We're not looking at pulling this person on board in November or
No,
October.
Which-
January.
Which begs the question, I think, because I think you make a really good point, Matt, in terms of liability and full-time. I look at this table and I'm like, there's probably two people at the table who understand this better than the rest of us, right? And I'm looking at Alex as borough manager and our solicitor, right? All the rest of us are playing a bit of a guessing game in that space, honestly, unless somebody here has real experience with full-time fire employees. I don't, right? Anybody does, please feel free to speak up. And so to that point, I would defer to them, I think even in the initial conversation. So I know Alex has looked at this. So if you have comment, so, Mr. Solicitor, if you have comment about it, I'm interested in hearing it now and again. We can have it again, but I think because you brought it up now, I think it's worth hearing those comments.
Well, certainly Ralph has functionally been getting out on all the calls during regular time, of course, the rest of his life, including Labor Day. Yesterday, they had a fatality out on a ramp of the Wilkinsburg interchange that was a long, drawn out day for them.
But even today was his vacation day.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
But
So-
just to be clear, Ralph's position does not require him to be fire chief, does not require him to have any
Well, that's
certifications.
what's interesting.
He's a
right?
dedicated volunteer who's
That's
done
what's
that for our
interesting. That
community.
job description thing you referenced earlier.
Yeah.
Really doesn't exist. But functionally, we all know he's doing those things on our time, that he's out answering the calls.
We got lucky.
But there wasn't a
Yeah.
description
We know
that pegged him to require this. So that's a great point. We developed a job description based on what Ralph actually does, not based on what he may have been hired to do in 2001, but what he's
Sure, we'll do
actually
that.
doing in the day-to-day, which is appropriate, because that's what you're paying for. You recognize, I think, in the last 3 years, we've done some very appropriate bumps on his salary to move him up, because when you did the restructuring, when Don and Sandy were leaving, you added to him a few extra duties that were definitely not in any job
That's
description. So appropriately, you've moved him into different categories. So we're doing a little catch up with him. In Latrobe, we have duty drivers. And duty drivers were to get a vehicle up, but not to connect a hose, or not to engage in the work of a member of a battalion to fight the fire. Did they? Could they? Maybe did they?
But that's not their actual
And
title.
the
or
reason
job
the borough
description.
did
That's
that
unfortunate.
was to, with the laws governing police and fire in Pennsylvania, and it made sense for us. I can't go any more than that.
Right.
But you're right, you're onto something that, as we move forward in the decision, we have to get our head around. That's why we're talking to Swissvale, and that's why we're talking to Dormont, because they're doing exactly that. These are no hiding, they're paid to get out on fire, but they're also spending good parts of their day proactively, whether it's smoke detectors or
Public safety here.
public safety inspections and other code enforcement activities, and how they handle them and what collective bargaining rights they have or don't, or have taken advantage of, I don't know. And those are some of the questions we have to figure out. Excellent. But their models exist, because I think a lot of communities in Allegheny counties are gonna have to think of this hybrid, because the daylights aren't being answered. It used to be at the factory, and the guys would come out, answer the call because they live in the neighborhood, and now they don't.
Which begs a secondary question, just on my mind, right, in terms of the liability and the comp, as you were pointing out, Matt, right, which is a really great point. it's not like we're free of liability or comp on Ralph, are we? Right?
So we do pay his
Help-
workers'
help
comp.
me
If he gets
understand.
hurt, if he gets hurt as a fire call, like when he was out.
Yeah, help me understand what that looks
He is
like in his
due
salary.
fire comp.
Mhm. It's a whole different thing. It's a different.
So,
If
so
he
to-
falls doing his public
Right.
service stuff, he's on our
Correct.
back. But we're paying comp one way or the other, but not to the degree that we might be.
There's some
And I'm not
different
familiar
Right.
with what we
Full-time
have.
fire.
We are a flexible employer that allows him to do a volunteer duty that he enjoys. That's the fine
That's
line.
exactly what it is.
Mhm.
That,
You're right.
that plays all the way, that plays all the way to litigation, man.
Yeah, I was like, I'm.
Not that I want to take a route that way.
I mean, but
I'm
that's,
being
that
real
is-
about
Is what it
right?
is.
that's, that's our past precedence of how we've done it, you know, that's.
Mhm.
These are super complicated issues. We represent Swissville and have for the last 35 or 40 years. So however they're doing it, I'm sure we could definitely, provide, similar kind of guidelines. But this is it's a very hot topic. Matt brings up a lot of really great points. We have a lot of volunteer and or paid, trying to restructure, trying to potentially, merge, as you see, you're seeing a lot of, public safety type situations, including, potentially the boroughs here. So, we just have to sort of sketch out what you're looking to do. And because there's no sort of like right way or wrong way to do it. There's pluses and minuses, no matter how you're gonna set it up. The Swissville one does seem to work really well, but the way that came about, if I'm remembering correctly, is they were essentially, you had, extra full paid firefighters who then began getting certifications and becoming
Right.
sort of code enforcers on top of their regular duty. A little bit of a different situation.
Then you start-
Some
so-
even do like.
Which I've done,
Right.
which I've done a lot of engineering work, so I've spoken to their chief at length, quite,
Yeah,
about how
Clyde's
that
great.
came about and what they did with it.
Yeah, Clyde was really innovative and they've had a
Yes.
lot of success in Swissville with the way they're doing it. So-
But they were paid firefighters first,
That's
and
correct.
then they needed to supplement
Versus
And
volunteer.
to save themselves some extra money. Instead of paying a consultant, they said, well, we'll bring these services in-house and have our firefighters get trained in multiple areas.
And the issue there is that, just like the police, I mean, in recent years, we've suddenly got this
Drought.
dearth.
We don't have.
It's a drought.
There's no, I mean, that's the space we're in, along with everybody else, not everybody else, but but it's, the condition just in the last 2 years on both fire and police has changed dramatically since COVID. It has changed very dramatically, so.
So how do we recruit volunteers?
If you didn't answer that question.
I
you
know.
wanna
I
ask
was like, well, that's $1 million question right
We need to
there.
have a cadet program starting in 9th grade at the Woodland Hills School District and get these kids
Look-
interested in policing and fire.
But look what Holiday Park did, which is Plum
Yeah.
did. We're talking kids that are in the teens, literally carrying fire hoses, getting
Yeah.
excited,
Yeah.
and they recruited 3 women and 5 guys.
Yep,
Out
bingo.
of it took 5 years to do it, you know what I mean? Like,
That's right.
you have to groom
Plant the
them.
seed.
Plant the seed, water it,
That's
Paul, we
right.
need you, like, but if you don't have that, there's no backfill,
We don't have any, and the police chief will play the same thing.
We're living in a desert.
That's just, like, it's a drought, we're literally in a
Yeah.
drought.
Follow that fence.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just, it was mentioned though that there's some current code violations and other stuff going on. I mean, as a follow-up to that beginning of that, have we worked with our current vendor? I mean, are we doing anything is there a problem with our vendor not providing the service we need? And
What?
There aren't enough hours. There aren't enough hours. When you're sharing somebody who does that, we don't have enough hours for somebody to go out and do that. And we've had a lot of problems with that because the person's overworked and, as Jay was saying, has multiple municipalities. What do? How much effort do you make on a particular property? And so I don't want to criticize the person, but we've tried, since I've been in this seat, we've tried numerous ways of addressing this issue. And it always comes back to the same thing, unless you have someone working for you for sufficient hours to actually get the job done. Because it's.
How many hours do we get?
What do we get them, once a week?
Once a week?
Is it one day a week?
Varies week to week. They're to be proactive and looking, they're to be filling the needs of the property inspections for occupancy and sales.
So if
And then they're to
there's a
do follow-up.
sale,
And I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this. I'm not satisfied
Yeah.
with the performance of our vendor. And they have been talked to, they have been coached, they have been explained, that we would like to do more. I've offered to the management of the company that we would pay for more hours.
Yeah.
That it seems like whether they're having a tough time hiring
Yeah.
because code enforcement officers are in demand and they have more communities than they can serve, so the hours aren't the issue for them, because I've said, let's enter an agreement where we pay you 20 hours a week,
Yeah.
because I need this to go happen. And I never get.
How many hours do we usually get, like average?
8.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Okay.
8 on a good week.
That
Yeah,
would
so
be-
that's
that
not
would be
bad.
generous, and the follow-up
That's
just
it?
isn't there.
Yep.
You need to like, send the letters of notice of violation and concerns, and need to follow up, and the proactivity is not there.
Got it.
Um,
And it drives.
We're
back
not
to
the only
other
one.
question.
It's sort of a similar conversation.
I never
A
go.
lot of local governments are struggling with the code area, whether they're
You can't-
trying to
you
hire
can't
them
help but see
in-house
it, right?
or using the vendors.
Like-
Broad as that. Yeah.
We're talking about the timing of a part-time and full-time person, right? This drives back to the other question. If we're saying 8, 10, 12 hours isn't close to enough on just code enforcement alone, right?
Right.
So what do we need for code enforcement alone?
Well, 20 hours is better than 8.
Okay, right. No, 100%. So that gives you 20 hours on code enforcement alone,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the job description isn't just code enforcement.
Do we
Right.
need 20 hours of code enforcement? Do we need
Yes.
more than that? I'm curious, that's like what our needs are. 'Cause I don't know.
Look, depends on who you talk to, right? We see neighboring communities, one of the challenges that they had over the decades is code enforcement. And the slow slide of neighborhood by neighborhood property values being affected by lack of enforcement.
Broken window. Right, the
We
broken
can-
window theory of price devaluation.
Mhm.
Right, you get one broken window that isn't taken care of, right? The
Yep.
next thing you know,
Right.
the other neighbors see it. But to your point, Val, I think, let's say it is 20, not more than 20 hours, but just 20 hours,
Mhm.
right? That's one piece of the job description. We don't have the job description in front of us, so I'm talking blankly. 'cause
Well, we do.
haven't
I do.
seen
I was just looking.
Yeah.
I haven't, I've pulled up yet, right? So if that's one piece of it, right, and we're trying to make the determination of a full-time or part-time position and sharing the hours, and we're hearing that sharing creates difficulty in code enforcement alone, I'm just begging the question. I don't have the answer. I'm posing the question. What does it look like for us to have a part-time position then, where we're sharing and asking for the full breadth of the job description, understanding that 10, 12 hours doesn't do close to what we need under code enforcement alone? Is it realistic for us to say, yes, a part-time position will meet the needs of the borough, or do we need a full-time position on sharing? I'm not making a determination. I'm putting it out to understand it more.
So I guess as a follow-up to that, my question would be, we have a public works vendor that does a fantastic job for us and hasn't had a problem providing enough employees. I mean, is that something that we can look to have a vendor for that does provide a part-time or almost full-time, or again, combining some of those hybrid roles? I mean, public works and code enforcement might go hand in hand, so maybe there's an opportunity there.
I mean, interestingly, I think we have danced the outsourced code enforcement multiple times under multiple shapes and sizes, right? Between the COG, I mean, I can only.
Right,
speak-
but you're talking as an individual service only for code enforcement. I'm saying in line with our public works, which we're very happy
I'm
with
saying I can only
outsourcing.
speak for what I've seen,
Right.
right? So I would defer, but I think that we're still looking at this kind of need that has been brought to us by Ralph, right, in terms of personnel. And our long-term planning with regard to Ralph. In
That's
terms
my
of
problem. That's
personnel.
my problem. I
So
really want to groom
If
somebody.
we're saying that we want to
The Ralph.
sideline
That's
or
my- that's
shelf
my-
that long-term planning with Ralph, then I understand what you're saying about outsourcing
Oh,
with
1000%.
regard to.
If this was,
But-
if Ralph wasn't his age.
Right,
And does as much as he does, if he was 28 years old and was doing this, I'd be on your side, but I agree with everybody. We have to groom the fact that Ralph, his wife has health problems and there's a bunch of other factors. We have to like make a new Ralph. I hate to say it, you know what I mean? Like, and that's,
Well, and like you say, with his age, you say long-term could be
It could be
4 months
tomorrow.
from now.
exactly. It can be
And-
tomorrow.
Well, again, I'm coming from the safety component,
Right.
which is where I am. One of the things that's got me concerned is that Ralph has been coming reporting to us about the dramatic increase in calls.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And a lot of those calls are coming during the daylight hours. That's when they have difficulty getting people.
Right, they're home from work.
So
Everybody's home
the
from work.
data's available on that, you know, but how many calls does Ralph have to go out on in a workday? And then that adds to the
He
issue.
had 4 today on his day off,
Right,
between the hours of 8 and
right.
4.
Yeah.
He was
So-
still here when I walked in.
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
literally walked
right, we
in.
walked in.
That'll teach you to take a vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me
Leave
ask
the country, leave the
Vacations are not-
country.
Vacations are not good ideas.
Leave the country.
Yeah, leave the country. That's my new.
Leave the
Let me
state.
ask this in a different way so that we can kind of get some progress here
Yeah.
on this. I definitely hear both a request for information in respect to the
Mhm.
part-time space
Mhm.
and what it looks like for full-time,
Mhm.
and a concern about part-time versus full-time, right? So I have kind of a handle in my own head on the full-time space, but I think the bigger question for me is, what would we need to see to understand better the value of part-time, right? And what would we need to see to understand better the value of full-time, right?
Right.
Like
What's
what's,
especially the thought of the fire
Within-
aspect.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that.
That
So I
is a
think
liability.
that's the question to me that needs to come back to council, unless I'm missing something.
Nope.
Nope.
And that
You're
allows us then to make a more informed decision with regard to full-time versus
Yeah.
part-time.
I'm thinking that this code enforcement, right now, if you had a full-time person and start out with the code, we've been kind of lax over the years with code.
Been terrible.
So, but
We also
people are like,
have that.
well, I could do whatever I want because no one bugs me. So
Right,
your code enforcement right now, I think would be very busy. But as the
Right.
word gets out that, hey, you
right.
know, these violations are gonna be addressed, then I think it could kind of dwindle a little bit. I could be wrong.
No,
No,
I-
it's
that
gonna
makes
spike.
sense.
Paul, you're right. It's gonna do this. It's gonna.
The challenge to me there is it runs opposite of what we're talking about, right? Because what you're saying makes perfect sense, right? We have a backlog. We have tried multiple ways to address code enforcement under multiple programs, right? We've never quite had the full-time kind of work that we need. You get somebody, they're full-time or whatever it is, doesn't matter to me.
Mhm.
They really hit the ground running, right? And so they have all these additional hours up front, which is the opposite of starting part-time, moving to full-time. And you can't really start part-time, start full-time, move to part-time. That's not realistic. So let's take a look, see what the fire implications are. Let's take a look and see really on kind of the need and job
This is what we're
description relationship. Then we can come back, revisit, and I think, you know, we've got till the budgetary, and I think we're in a good space.
Okay, well, thank you very much. That very insightful. I appreciate it.
Awesome. What happens when I'm not buried 40 hours, you know, a day underneath this rock somewhere? All right, anything else? We'll just stay in management budget unless there was something else that we missed. I think we jumped kind of forward. Unless there's something else under the general stuff, we can roll to questions, concerns, and start a kind of interesting conversation up to Lisa, if we will. So I turn it to floor first to hear.
So just on the management budget, you do have an applicant for the zoning hearing board, and my understanding was your committee will maybe interview the person, have a further discussion. If you add them in October, or even if you added them next week, they wouldn't be able to participate in the most current hearing. The hearing is already underway, and it was continued to September 25th, but that person's in your binder.
And for clarity, it's singular, right?
We have one opening and we have one applicant. You can choose to appoint them
Yep.
or
No, just
keep
making sure
advertising for.
everybody understands the kind of landscape of it.
Yeah.
But even if you were really liking the person, wanted to get them in next week, they couldn't really
No, understood.
join the 25th. And get
Understood,
in.
but just for clarity for people procedurally, that we're dealing with a singular applicant.
And
versus-
hopefully the zoning hearing board does not tie, and you may be aware, but it doesn't hurt to say. Zoning hearing boards often have alternates. Though they have three, many communities will add the fourth alternate who can participate. And if something happens, could vote. That is, if somebody else isn't able to make the entire hearing and the alternate does, could vote. Something to keep in mind is we're trying to fill positions So if somebody said, oh, you filled the zoning hearing board position, I was just about to apply. You're like, we can make you an alternate.
Please step in,
Yes.
please step in.
But right now, there's one opening and one person.
Also, as a matter of just point of notice, you know, we were scheduled to meet with Wilkins regarding kind of the merger space. You know, I did talk to Mike, yeah, no, not really talk.
We
You know,
send the
we
text.
emailed back and forth, yeah.
To the same.
Yeah, let's see, not a whole lot of talking. Not a good joke. So Wilkins, Mike Boyd over at Wilkins broke his jaw. It's having surgery today, actually.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Our conversations, obviously.
so that postpones that a little bit, which makes life relatively easy in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, we will, you know, as soon as he is conscious again from surgery, I mean, he was quick. You know, the way that it came across to me, and, you know, I don't know how other people read it, but it read pretty nasty.
The plate.
You know, like getting the
yeah.
plate put in his jaw kind of thing is not something that generally makes you think, like when you text somebody like, you know, hey, hope you're okay, hope you're feeling better, you know, I heard about your accident. You don't expect somebody to hit you right back like in 5 minutes, like, thanks, you know, I'm gonna be fine, I'm just scheduling for surgery
He may
tomorrow.
not have been feeling any.
That's
I was gonna say,
It was
Love
super
modern
kind. so
medicine.
maybe this is our best opportunity.
Yeah, that's like
That's what I'm saying, like,
this.
that's-
Actually, can we just do this over text?
Get him now.
But yeah, so that's real, and that, you know, there's unfortunate, obviously.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's
But
better.
something we know, you know, notified of, and I don't know if anybody's reached out outside of myself, to
No,
them,
as far as I know.
but, you know, certainly, you know, wish him well and hope that all goes well.
Man, his wife must have been mad at him.
That's another way of looking at it, right? You know?
He's very outdoorsy, he's a
Yeah.
cyclist, you know,
And just- yeah.
all of that, yeah, he does all that.
So, that makes the rest of my life relatively easy in some ways, harder in other ways. And it really looks at, for the police contract that we've got in your binder, you know, not voting today, vote next week, so we have, you know, time you can look at, discuss more, any questions, concerns, you know, that come through. The one thing I did want to point without going to executive session, just kind of more general spaces of this, FMLA, just as an FYI, right, includes, you know, adoption, fostering, right, and her just general federal level. Just as something to kind of point out, because I know that was something that was a general question, and something that isn't specific to anything as it's federal space, unless I'm missing something there, Gavin, in terms of the magical world of FMLA. So no, it's pretty straightforward, very frankly. So I will pause, and I don't know if we want to have a quick, you know, an exec after to have a more kind of detailed conversation. I think it makes sense.
Yeah,
People have the
if you don't
time.
mind, I would like that, because I'm a newbie.
Yeah, no, no,
I
totally
read
fine.
it, I just want to like
What
go
what I
over
was
it.
gonna, I'm offering one of two ways in the sense that we can do an exec
Just
after
real
this.
quick, yeah,
or an
I
exec
just want to go over some
before next
things.
one to hash it out, or both.
Yeah.
So happy to do both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think an exec after this, when we're done,
Yeah.
to kind of outline, and
Good.
then I would still suggest an executive session
Yes.
before the business meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because that's the voting space, so that
Yes.
way you've had time to kind of delve a little deeper, have some, you know, substantial questions, and that way we can kind of hit those up before we come in. I don't love the idea of just kind of rolling forward.
No.
This is too important,
Yeah.
and because we want to recruit and have a great police force, right?
Yeah.
And B, this is 47% of our budget,
Right.
so I'm in finance, so I'm like, you know, like.
Both fair points that I agree to, without.
Yeah, like, so
I think-
thank you, I would appreciate that, and if we do an executive, maybe right after, it'd be great, just a quick overview, but if we do an
Well,
executive
that's what I was saying,
session,
right, we do.
do we
one-
have the lawyer that helped draft this
You can ask for the
come?
labor attorneys available.
Yeah, just in case there's
Sure.
weird language.
I think that's
I
a
do
great,
contracts for a living, so like, I'm
Good
like,
idea.
point. Good
just even
idea.
for,
And I think
half an hour,
it's an
you know.
easier space to do before.
Me too.
before the vote.
Yeah.
me too,
Right?
because I'd rather this all be done and we go and be like, stamp.
Easy peasy.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, I
And I
appreciate it.
think it's one of our most important votes in a while.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that and budget.
Yeah,
Our
and
budget.
this is 40%, this is 47% of
Minimize
our
the
budget.
But this is part of our budget, right?
Which gives me
Police
heart
roles
palpitations.
as the primary
Yep.
budgetary role.
No, it
I
is, yeah.
will say, I think realistically with this and it running with the potential of the regionalization,
Yes,
that the time period of this was suggested by them. And I think, and we can talk about this in exactly, more detail.
Yeah.
But just in the basic space of this, we're working in a weird space again of trying to be in a filler space, and we can talk about that later, but
right,
just to kind of
stopgap, if you will.
put that out
if
there,
you
if
need
you
to
will.
be. Yeah.
So we'll roll that to an exec after the fact.
Thank you.
Unless there's other things on that, then, because we'll cover it in exec, we can
Nope,
move
we're good.
into finance.
What about the Churchill Environmental Council thing? Do you have?
I mean, that's one more.
Nobody
on
likes
that.
the environment, Jay.
We're still working on, probably in the newsletter, trying to communicate what that is, and
Okay.
what those roles would be. As
Alright.
you realize, it's almost down to its minimal complement. We're not the only community that's kind of like down to one.
Right.
Why is it a 6-year term? I'm just curious.
That isn't very clear. I've not been able to get a bylaws.
Thank you for
I've
that,
noticed in our
right?
community, we've appointed 4 years and 6 years at various times in reading minutes. I'd like to get to the charter if that was possible, but that doesn't seem to be.
Sometimes people don't want to commit, like,
That's
that's
a
a
long
long
time.
time.
That's a lot.
It
that's a
is.
long
Very
time.
divorced.
6 years, I don't even know what I'll be doing 6 years from now. Right.
And I don't know, Gavin, if I asked you a question, if you had anything in your records of what they.
I mean, I remember getting, like, early on, we would have someone give reports from the environmental council, a lot of the council meetings, but as far as the mechanics of how,
So I've asked the current board members to help me with that, so that may change. But stay tuned for that. It doesn't hurt to have it on this agenda for people who are new to it.
Yeah.
I think we need a newsletter article to more fully describe
What
that
it
group
is.
would be doing.
It was Jen, that's
Yes.
the bottom line, it was Jen.
Enough said. Thank you. Moving on.
And for clarity, I'm an accidental environmentalist,
Uh-huh.
and that's the only way it happens. It's always by accident.
I see, okay,
Okay.
yes, all right, sorry, I didn't do that, I just want to make, I had Deb was involved.
No, this makes perfect sense to me. That's a great question.
Joe, you might have associated that with the climate action,
Well,
Right?
yeah.
Right,
I-
yeah.
Is it-
that-
It will
yeah,
be.
but I was kind of like,
that's
What?
yes.
It
Which I think is a logical kind of question.
well, of course
to
it is,
have.
right, right,
Well,
right.
hard.
And
Right.
typically that was Joan's space.
Killed my plan.
Yeah, well, and again, we didn't have, we had Joan in the
Yeah.
one space, which drove all environmental issues in the best way, right? Like, because without her, quite frankly, it would have laid to waste in so many different opportunities to see it all go away.
So with the park?
Yes, I mean, just generally, right?
Yep.
On the other side of it, right, we don't have Joan, and we do have a climate action space.
Right,
And so it starts to beg some questions that I think we.
because I'd like to know exactly what they do and how we can
And I
maybe
think
work together.
that's the, right, the question it begs is first, what
work
is council oversight? B, what is redundancies?
Right,
C, what is,
Right.
if it's not redundant, where is there the opportunity for cooperation?
exactly.
All that is true. And I will leave that to a committee to sort out,
Okay.
if you will. Okay. So I think that now moves us to, unless I'm missing something, number 6. I'm missing something again. Just slowly getting conscious here
You're good.
in my council world, so,
You're good.
so stay with me. All right, so again, same situation of questions, concerns, and then comments.
We had the local government academy financial health assessment meeting last week.
That was
Last week?
really good.
It was very good.
It was amazing. They praised staff.
Mhm.
And
Left and
thank you,
right.
staff, for the
Yeah.
record. Thank you, because
Staff has done so much since Alex has came on. There's been so many policies, procedures that have been updated. The way that finance is run, Michelle has done an amazing job.
Amazing.
And they have really, really praised the great job that staff is doing. We are in a really, really good position. There's some things that we can work on and make better, and there's some things that we can keep doing to keep that trajectory. And there's gonna be one last final, this was our draft meeting, but there's gonna be another meeting to get our final assessment done. But
And
It was really, really great.
And not to besmirch anyone, but we really did go from what would have been the equivalent of the card catalog before,
Yes.
before Alex was here,
Yes.
right? In
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
And even then,
Um,
like, they did a really great job at that card
Oh,
catalog.
they did, I mean,
Like even like bringing that Alex really, I don't know, Allison did a lot of trying to do research and them trying to put it all together
oh, I know,
too.
they were joking, they went through the card catalog.
Yes, they
right?
went
I
through
mean,
it, yeah,
That
so,
was, it was a Herculean task in the
Yes.
original space,
Yeah.
just to be clear about it. So I'm just, remembering that.
Yep.
To where we are, just would
Yes.
like to throw extra praise and even
Yes.
on all of the staff for
Well,
working.
I just want to add, these are people who dropped into this space, who knew nothing about us, nothing about our borough, in the middle of COVID. Okay, and they got all this done.
and even then, as amazing as the staff has already been, I feel like they're always wanting to learn more and.
That's what makes the difference about
Yes,
it.
they're always
We're not, we didn't just check like we did something. It's always,
No.
how do we improve?
Yes,
you
how do we
know?
improve? How do we improve? Like, what is the standard of practice? Let's be better than that. So that was great. We got awesome remarks.
Also the addition of Ashley.
Oh,
Yes, the addition of Ashley
His
full-time, that
help.
was part of that.
Alex helped everybody.
I actually read the report.
Yeah,
I was really impressed.
yeah, it's
yeah.
very, very thorough.
Yes.
A-
It
It's thorough.
compares us with the
I like the
other
comparison because it gives me
communities.
like,
All
the
that
district.
comparison data is so
Full
helpful.
benchmark.
isn't it? Because benchmarking is so
Yeah,
important
full
because
benchmark.
Very,
I can look at my own data, but what does it mean versus?
very helpful.
Right,
anybody
how does that
else?
compare with
Yeah, I'm
everybody
like,
else?
is that good or bad?
Maybe we think
Right.
we're great, but we
Right.
don't know.
We don't know.
unless you-
Yeah.
There's some things you can't compare apples to apples,
No,
but some you
right.
can.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
absolutely, right.
So
So very good.
So I appreciate we
Good
did
job.
I
we
didn't
did
know if you
that.
wanted to add
Well,
anything else
just,
to
you gotta
that.
read the report, but
Yep.
criticize it, critique it. It's a draft, just as we were talking about, we might want to mention to Deb and Rick that you're conceptually thinking about the code,
Well, we talked about that.
our staff, but just be clear in that, because what we hope is that not only the LGA, but the state who's been attending the meetings,
Yes.
maybe find it in their good nature to help support the startup of the position.
That would be nice.
I-
Oh,
If
it's
we
part
get
of
If
the
we could get it into an
the
implementation.
implementation plan.
um,
We did talk about that
We
our
talked
last
about, yeah, we talked
meeting.
about some things, but it might be something to more emphasize and explore that.
I agree.
Politics, ask people.
I
things.
agree, Alex. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
These things kind of develop as we go. I think
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
an opportunity to
Yeah.
make sure the final report helps
Yes.
if possible.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, obviously, is the budget we talked about in the MMO, which is something we do every
Yep.
September. This is stating what you're going to budget next year. The state wants you to acknowledge your obligation for pensions. The good news is this number has decreased since Kevin Collins and Jay Dorn and Diane Law and others have worked on it. I think that one of the graphs, if you look at the report, will show you since 2012, how far this has come down.
Yes.
You went from, I think, 80% funded in pensions. I think they called it minimally distressed to.
No, yeah,
Fully
completely.
funded.
Yeah, it's completely
Over.
funded.
Over.
As, yeah,
That is
green is good.
And that's where you want to be. That's good management, but it doesn't happen overnight. It isn't something like you could do in 1 year. It took a long term of the meeting the minimum, but managing wise. So credit for a long time. You've got that.
And listening to others complain along the way.
Well, that's every day.
So. Excellent, excellent. Anything else coming out of finance?
Working on the budget.
There's a lot in your binder related to the state PSABs budget document and an ALOM salary studies.
Yep.
If you want to know what these guys cost at Swissville, you could look up today
Exactly.
in that report, or Dormont, we mentioned them.
That's what I
The
think.
ALOM salary
One of my
studies,
favorite, one of my
250
favorite reports
pages,
every time.
looking
Just to be
through
clear.
So
from
helpful.
police chiefs to managers to code enforcement to every municipal position is benchmark.
It's
And that's
benchmarking,
what we
exactly.
used before, and if you haven't, perused through it,
Yeah, that's worth.
please do. It is, it's well worth it. It gives you kind of the point of benchmarking again and understanding both on the sides of the community, the active, like it's
Right.
it's a very helpful space to understand.
And I would be remiss if I didn't say, staff is very appreciative. We know we're well compensated in the scheme of things. We see from that study that we're okay. And we appreciate that. And that needs to be made clear anytime you're talking about your thanks for staff. Staff really acknowledges, it's good to be supported.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Even when I fail at it, I still try. That's all I can say. Public safety? Anything?
Well, just what was said.
You're like,
That's a fair
check that
statement.
box, moving on.
That is a very fair statement.
Don't need to be redundant at this point.
You're good.
Moving on.
I love it.
That's it.
Any additional comments out of infrastructure?
So we had our most recent meeting, the agenda for that's in the binder. If anyone has questions, please let me know. We did hold our, public education night for the lateral ordinance, it's gonna be coming out, so. We had a number of people stop by, which was good. So some residents that are interested in learning more about it, and then a number of, local realtors and I don't know if anybody from closing companies came, but it was good to have some realtors stop by. And make sure that they'll be letting,
What were kind
folks
of
know.
primary questions or concerns that were coming out of realtors or others?
I'd say mainly the concern was just wanting to understand, the process, the need for it. A lot of folks are still confused that, and said, well, we already do dye testing. Doesn't that cover it? And it's like, no, it doesn't. So Alex had a nice visual he put together with, Denny that, was on a PowerPoint. So we were able to go, hey, here's where the pipes actually go underground. And I think that was helpful. And then the only other thing was we have a requirement for, the plumber to be NASCO certified,
Right.
and they had asked, is it possible to put together some type of list, or at least, say, hey, here's some local ones that we, believe are still NASCO certified. Of course, saying the borough would, I'm sure, have to say, run, some language by Gavin saying, hey, we're not endorsing any specific company, and, double check that they still are certified, et cetera. But that was something they said might be helpful. So we're exploring that, option as well.
Cool. And that was coming from the real estate companies? The real estate-
From the.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Cool. I think
Which
to
makes
me,
sense.
that's
That makes
the-
sense.
That's the better place for me to want to understand just personally,
Yeah.
anyway, because I'm talking about my people moving in and buying
Sure.
versus
They need to be
people
educated.
moving out, selling, and I hate.
Yeah, I think, one person came by and just said, well, we shouldn't have to do this. And then somebody else, one of their other colleagues was like, well, everyone else is doing it too, and it makes sense to
Yeah.
like do it. So, some people aren't gonna be happy, and that's okay.
The sky is still blue and it will be blue
That's the
tomorrow.
understatement of the day, right?
I thought it was really good because I think there were real estate agents from different areas in
Yeah.
a sense. So that they all talk to each other.
Right. Oh,
So whatever it is that they learned from what you did, that's gonna travel. So,
Yeah, I think Alex, one or two people had mentioned to you about I think gave you a business card about sending something over because they could distribute it through the office, like over in Squirrel Hill.
mhm.
Through
That's
that,
good.
yeah, so it was good. I think it was well worth the time and investment.
Awesome.
Do you think it's
Thank
worth
you
it
for
to
the
have
investment.
another one? Or do you think you?
No, I think we're pretty well covered, and of course, staff will do an excellent job supporting, if anyone does have questions, but, will there be a closing that is supposed to happen, 2 days and they'll go, hey, we didn't do our CCTV
Of
yet?
course.
Of course, that's gonna happen. I mean, some closing company will miss it, or somebody won't, see it on the list or whatever else. That's, it's bound to happen. It happens everywhere, so.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with those individually as they come and either find a way to do it temporary, or,
I was gonna say,
sometimes real estate deals get delayed for a week and it's okay.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they do.
My neighbor had it done the other day.
Matt, thank you
Oh,
for
that's
taking the
awesome.
2 hours.
Really, to see
to
some
set
data.
aside
He might be one of
time
the first
to do
ones.
that.
That's really cool.
Good.
Good
It's really
stuff.
cool.
Good stuff. All right.
Communications. Yeah.
Communication, that's me.
Everyone got the articles in? We're good?
Yep, I think we're good. Article-ish, goodish.
Goodish?
Goodish.
We met the deadline.
Yes,
Okay.
there
We all
are
emailed.
newsletter deadline. Also, we've been talking about these videos for quite some
Mhm.
time.
Right.
Thank
Deb,
you.
Mastermind over here.
Yes, we're excited.
We are very excited. They should be done
I
soon.
think we will finish them at
Next
the end
couple
of
weeks.
next week.
Yeah, in a
Right.
couple weeks. We'll just say a couple
And we
weeks.
hope to have them on the website.
There's 3
awesome.
videos.
3 videos. Starts with our dear mayor doing a nice introduction about our lovely community and other things about our community. And I think it's great to have, well, people are more visual now,
100%,
so we
yeah.
need
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
And also, when people are Googling around, where do I want to live or whatever, it's like, oh, let me learn more about Churchill. And it's
Yeah.
nice to see a full page and but when you actually see the video.
Yep.
And all the
it's a
things
TikTok
that we
world,
have to
Deb. It's a
offer.
TikTok world, like
It-
seriously.
No, it really is a
I'm
TikTok
not, I'm
world.
not being, this is not
Right.
my
No,
world.
no,
I like
it's
to
true.
read, but like,
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
truly,
it's a video
it's a
world.
video world.
And the goal is to have that video embedded into the website so that when people go and log into the website,
Right.
that's gonna be the first thing that
They
pops up.
can,
They can click on it if they wanna watch it. They don't have to
Mhm.
click on it, but it will be there.
And we really did spend a
Poor
lot of
Paul.
time with myself and my videographer.
Yep.
Going around the whole community, shooting beautiful pictures. I had a dear friend who has a drone, who did some
That's
wonderful
awesome.
drone
Oh, I was
shots.
just gonna ask if there's drones for
Yes,
There
there
is.
is.
super cool. That's
Yes,
super cool.
there
Yes,
is.
there is.
Matt would want the drone.
I'll be back.
Right, no, it was super cool. It was actually super cool to watch him doing it. But also, I'm hoping, so we get this on our website, and maybe the end of October, I get him to come back when the leaves are
All full.
Oh,
gorgeous.
yes.
Mm.
Paul
And
would,
not,
yes.
not to re-edit everything,
No,
but just to throw in a few,
Mhm.
another beauty shots.
Yep.
So,
Yeah,
and
that-
it could
that's
also
our
be
media girl.
something that maybe in the winter, we
Right.
throw in a few, that's quick and easy, quick
Yeah,
and
With
easy.
me following my butt trying to.
Shovel.
Right.
We don't use the word snow around.
No,
here.
sorry,
We don't
sorry,
mention the word
but-
snow.
But there are
Winter is
some,
coming.
there are some
If
beauty
there's
shots
something
to be
floating
had when
around,
it's a
yes.
beautiful snowfall. And so that's something that, once we have the base of 3 separate
And
videos,
you can keep.
which does, I know it probably sounds like, why is it taking you so long? You can't imagine when
Well, there's
you're
voiceover
talking,
too.
well, it's voiceover, which, thank you to Bill Flanagan, who,
Oh, Bill did it.
you know,
Yeah,
Bill Flanagan,
yes,
who's
yes.
worked at KDK, WPXI, he is a Churchill resident. And it was actually Alex's suggestion, which was a good one, and Bill was kind enough to do, he has a voice, he has a whole studio in his
Oh, I didn't
basement.
know that.
That's
Well,
really
that
cool.
happened, he told me during COVID, when no one could go into a station, they had to put things, right, so now he has this, so he did, we do have the introduction from our mayor for the first video, and then we have Bill doing the
As
voiceover,
the
everything else,
talking.
yeah.
Cool.
So,
That's super cool,
yes,
Deb.
we're very excited, it's a group effort,
No,
all of
that-
us.
You were
But,
the master.
No, I was like, you were.
yeah, but I
you
mean,
are the
everybody
mastermind.
looked at the script and made little changes and whatever, but,
That's really
I'm very
cool.
excited about it, and, so,
You have
Our
the video of the community day too as well.
Yep.
well, that was the yeah,
Yeah,
right,
she was
so
Mhm.
Janine, Janine Michael, who is a
Oh, no,
videographer
did I
that worked
was
with
I
us for
spilling my drink on
years.
me at that point?
She was there all day at Community Day,
Mhm.
Shooting video.
filming
Yes.
video of everybody and everything, which
Mm-hmm.
that will be implemented in it as well. So that was kind of like our last video that we needed to finally complete
Well, it
everything.
ties all together at that point. You
What's
know,
that?
it ties all together at that
Oh,
point. you
sure,
know what I
sure,
mean?
sure,
Like,
sure. Yeah.
I'm sitting here smiling because our council is so cool.
Oh, yeah, we're pretty cool.
We're cool.
I mean,
Pretty
yeah,
cool.
we're so
Mhm.
cool.
Pretty
But,
You
cool.
are. Let's be clear about that.
No, no.
I got,
you've
I'm
got
over
a
here,
cool
man.
council.
The best, y'all. Very
So again, in a couple of weeks, it should be. up and
Wanna
running.
roll into climate then?
Oh, I
Wait a minute,
guess.
one-
we'll-
just one more
Go
thing
ahead,
about-
go ahead.
About the communication. If I read it correctly, on that Meta Suite, it gave a percentage of increase of the number of people that are looking at our Facebook
Yes.
page and the Instagram page.
Good.
It looked like there was an increase
That's
in
good.
the number
Good.
of people
That's what
that
we
are.
want.
Well, and I think
Good.
a lot of
Looking at
it was, we did paid advertisements right before Community Day.
Smart.
So I think with those paid advertisements, we got more likes,
Sure.
more eyes on it. So I think
Sure.
that has something to do with it.
Right.
That's good.
What's
Mhm.
fascinating to me is the number of people outside the borough.
Yeah. Who come
That
and watch.
was a statistic.
It was
I
amazing.
think 35% of our residents are a savvy citizen. 65% are outside.
So what drives that?
I don't know.
Seriously. I mean, it's-
Truly, if you're marketing wise, it's how we're truly the ads, number one.
Yeah, that's.
And it, when, because you're in your phone and you're like scrolling, all of a sudden you see something, like, well, what's that? You click and you're like, oh, this is cool. And then you start clicking on it and then following it and liking it.
Flashes on.
No, thank you.
Mhm.
So I truly believe that it's driven by the marketing aspect of it.
Mhm.
So
I also think demographics are different.
Well, yes, we're
too,
getting a
Yeah.
little
Out
bit
in other
Yeah.
communities.
communities.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we might have a aging population, we can all
Yes.
agree
Yep.
in Churchill.
Yeah,
Mhm.
But around us, we don't.
yes,
And
that's the biggest.
Right.
yes,
Yeah,
People want to know what's
what-
going on in Churchill.
exactly.
That's the biggest.
I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out the question, not just, because that makes perfect sense, right? Like, who's more likely to use an app like Savvy Citizen? Sure, right,
Yeah.
based on demographics. But why the interest that they're like, yeah, and I want to sign up for Churchill?
I think
Right,
that
like,
comes from.
Well,
I-
Savvy
years
Citizen
ago.
specifically kind
1000%,
of promotes
that's what
that,
put you-
right?
yeah.
When you
They-
sign up for
Mhm.
Savvy Citizen, it says like,
Here's your
you want to
neighborhood
know,
community.
Yeah.
especially
Check,
too,
check,
because
check,
of
check.
like traffic issues, things like
Mhm,
that, like they're
mhm.
connected. So if
Right.
there's, if, Forest Hills is closing a road, I want to
Mhm.
know about that, so I
Sure.
sign up for Forest
Exactly.
Hills.
Yeah, so I'm cutting through,
Yeah,
exactly.
and Now,
Right.
Facebook, that's
Right.
probably a different reason
Yeah.
why we're getting reach outside the
Mhm.
borough.
But there was a bump because of Community Day. If you look at my manager's report, every month I give you this, social media statistics. We're up 7%, over 7% of Facebook, over 4% in Savvy Citizen. In fact, we've had 60 new subscribers from the first day of Community Day, went up like 30.
That's
Uh-huh.
And we've
awesome.
had another 30 since then.
Oh,
So if
that's
you look at
good.
our chart, it's gone up very
Where did
nice.
that
Well, that's why I read. I knew I read it
Exactly.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's been a real nice bump from Community Day, which is what you want.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well, we were also at Community Day passing
Passing
out,
Right.
you know, here's our social media, giving it to
I
people.
signed somebody up for Savvy Citizen when I was there. I'm like, oh, I got you, girl, here, and I
Yeah.
downloaded it, right, and that is so
Right.
important. But then she's like, oh, this is super easy. I'm gonna tell my neighbor,
Sure,
Right.
exactly.
and it's unfortunately marketing 101. It's,
No.
this is a business aspect, not like,
Well, it
Right.
is.
like this is
Sure.
We want
definitely.
to market our
It's,
community.
this is definitely,
I mean,
this is
that's
my
part of
wheelhouse. I'm like,
communication.
yeah.
And
What's really interesting is our YouTube page. While we're very much smaller than Monroeville or Mill Creek Township up in Erie County, I've looked at
I
those recently.
just went to Mill Creek
We
Hospital.
almost have as many videos and as many subscribers as they do on their YouTube channels, though they have like literally TV production in their wheelhouse.
Yes.
You know, they have
Instead of little
studio
old me.
and-
Like I
and-
said.
Oh, you got this.
You're quite the
Again,
package.
Yeah.
cool people.
Yeah.
not cool
See,
people. I
see.
got it.
Well, and I think that our communications committee does an excellent job too on the highlighting the community, especially on Facebook, like just the little plugs, like, hey, send your pictures of Christmas decorations in, because that
Exactly.
spreads,
Well,
you
people
yeah,
love
you share
that.
it, one of your friends
Mhm.
sees it from across
Oh
the
my
stage.
gosh, that's your-
That
this is
helps
your
promote it on
house.
Facebook
Mhm.
more, so it gets,
Mhm.
so
Community thing.
stuff like that, so maybe we can do a cool
Yeah.
fall foliage one.
Yes.
Let me
And when I
ask
walked
you-
through the Eagle Room the other day, those lace people were in there.
Mm.
So I took a couple pictures. I want to put them on the Facebook. page.
I never knew we had that
I,
until you
I,
posted
I
that.
did,
The lace
I didn't
people?
either, honest to God. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
lace
Going
people?
back,
They like the
going
new
back
lights.
to me, maybe a bit of an aging community. So, You know, I
Nice way to
appreciate
put
them.
it.
I think they are fantastic, and I think it is kind of in a very traditional sense.
Well,
you
and
know,
I
just
thought
the
it was
lace
just
fronts.
neat to see the,
I think it's very cool.
the skill, like that was, I appreciate it when you put
I
that up.
can't
Paul.
sew a button
So
on.
here's my last question on this, and I'll shut up about it anyway. So how many folks here have Savvy Citizen for their neighboring communities? So that's why I asked the question, probably, because I don't.
Neither do
Really?
I.
And
I
so,
don't either.
Oh,
so
I do.
because
Oh,
I
me too.
don't,
God,
I
yeah.
don't understand why
Forest
people
Hills,
do
Forest
that.
Hills,
That's-
I have Wilkins,
Wilkins,
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills.
All the
But it makes-
surrounding.
But
I
it's
have-
helpful to me, like, I appreciate
Braddock.
that, your explanation.
Yeah, I want to
because-
know.
because
I want to
You know
know
what, though?
everything.
I don't feel like
Me
I'm
too,
plugged in
except
that
if I'm
way.
driving through, because I
I
drive for a
did,
living, I need
But
to.
then I was getting too many
Get too much
notifications.
stuff,
That's it.
So I got enough to do.
Okay,
You can mute some.
That's what I did. I
Yeah,
knew
you
it.
can mute them.
Well, when you're young, you can do that. When you're older, you can't figure that
I'm
stuff.
gonna slide us back to the climate space.
Okay, but one more shout out to our mayor who had to do the introduction and we did it in front of his house. And that is not an easy thing to do because, I had to stop. Sometimes there's a car coming by and he was so patient and you did a great.
Then I forgot the words.
Well, that's,
That's a lot.
it's
That
hard
comes with territory.
because it's not just.
Welcome
one-
to your Bobby Churchill.
It's not just one sentence and we don't have a teleprompter like the news people do.
Mhm.
So he just kind of had to memorize
Yeah.
it and walk and talk at the same time, open the door. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah,
And
like-
I need to
and
mic up.
You did a good job. Yeah, you really did. It was very welcoming too. I
That's
thought
the point.
That's the
That-
point.
that's the
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would have been cool if you were using cue cards, but then there probably would have been an accident on Thornberry Drive. You know, somebody throwing the cue cards and the mayor's talking, somebody else would just crash your house.
Probably
Yeah.
trip and fall
Yeah.
or something, right?
Well, the mail
You
lady
guys are the
stopped.
best
She says,
together.
"You want me to-"
Right, the mail lady stopped us, right?
I'm forcing you forward to climate
Yeah,
action.
yeah.
Okay, climate action, climate action.
Intern,
Well,
right?
all I have right now, and it's, pretty big news, and we've been talking about it for a few months, is we now have an intern on board.
Mhm.
Her name is Jess Fortino. She's a senior from Penn State University. But she is a native of Pittsburgh, and she is studying energy and sustainability policy. And she's going to be working with us all year round for last year of her senior year to help establish a 5-year climate action plan. And as we all know, there are many good positives out of this, that we need one because it will help us with grants.
Yes, because that was good with
It
grants.
will help us with grants. We have
Sorry, now
something
come back to
very-
finance.
Right, and I've learned that through Connect and through Eric Rab, who, many meetings with him, that, when you have something established like that, first, it shows that you are serious about it.
Which we are.
Which we are, and we have to keep thinking forward,
Mhm.
not just live in the moment.
We recycled one day now.
Right. And it will also entice, young families who are all about climate change and whatever, and like, oh, let me Google Churchill. Oh, they have a climate action plan. Now, it won't be as comprehensive as, let's say, a bigger municipality, like, for example, Monroeville or whatever, because we are a small borough, but yet there are small things we can do to improve our borough, ourselves, what have you. And she knows a lot of it is about education.
Yep.
We want to educate and inform our residents. So
Exactly.
she will, she's coming on board soon, and I hope that we can introduce her at our in person at our October workshop.
Yeah.
And I'm going to probably set up for our climate action
Right.
committee to meet her ahead of time via Zoom, just so you can, we can get to know her. And I was on a Zoom with Connect, and she seems delightful and very energetic and very excited to do this. So that's about it for climate action.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate it.
Appreciate your work.
Here,
Any comments, dear space?
here.
Well,
Dear.
Some of you may have seen that the city of Pittsburgh is going to try to give it a stab. okay?
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
I told you, not doing it.
I'll just let you go.
And,
not cool.
Give it a shot.
Ah.
Oh.
We're gonna give it a shot.
Bottom line, all these things, all these efforts, we try to stay on top of, we try to see what people are doing, we try to see what the trends are and all that sort of stuff. I'll give you one thing. The bill that they introduced, okay, was basically 2 weeks before the deadline that they had to submit the application to the
Was
state.
it like 10 days? I mean,
Yeah.
it was bad.
It was
yeah.
bad. And the big ask was about $10,000.
For
So-
what?
For the whole DEER program, the
Okay.
pilot program, okay?
What are they?
And then one of the council members said that, this city council member said that he loves feeding the deer.
Ooh.
Well, so this, just a little more background, this,
Yeah.
the city of Pittsburgh, and I think they basically, somebody introduced, I don't remember where it came from, but they were gonna have bow hunters
Mhm.
register and come
Mhm.
kill up to
Right.
200 deer or something,
Right.
you
One
know,
day.
One
in,
day.
in like a 2-week span or something.
It was like,
Yeah.
yeah, there was like time periods. in
Time
this
periods,
too.
So that was but then,
Stay tuned.
right, and then now it's gotten referred into committee, like, long story is the reason this is taking a long time for Churchill, and we're working through all this, is trying to just throw something together is not productive or helpful, so.
Things do take time. in fact.
No, and the thing is, let's be honest, the thing is that people get a lot of pressure to do something. And then they throw something together as a token,
Mhm.
and then, it doesn't work, or, they hope people forget about it, like the chickens, or whatever the situation is. But thanks for bringing that to my attention. I would have seen it, but I was afraid that that's the way it would go, and that's what it was about, and it was, so, onward. They've eaten everything in my yard, I can
Just-
tell you
just
that.
Oh, yeah. Well, the
You
others,
don't
I don't
have
think about
peppers.
hosses because they're gone.
Oh,
A little note here, I got a
Sorry.
call, I guess it was Sunday,
Mhm,
from a resident over on Kingsdale.
mhm.
That a deer had got killed, it was laying on the street, and she wanted to know, like, could they come over and get it? Who
Yeah.
does that?
Yeah,
I said, we call 911 or what?
Yeah.
I think the borough did get in touch with them, they said, you know, it's a holiday, we can't send our guys out.
Yeah, right.
But then she texted me back, someone ran it over again and made it a bigger mess. So then the final thing was, her husband and a couple neighbors, I'm not sure what they did, wrapped it up or something,
yeah,
at least got it out of the way.
right.
I don't know if
It's-
anyone
it's
picked up
very
today or,
nasty, very, very.
so it's,
Yeah,
No problem.
magic.
so
Oh, dear.
when you have a weekend like that, and, or a holiday weekend, an animal gets killed, and it's 95 degrees outside,
Mhm.
another car's running over a couple times.
Just quickly, what is interesting is that both Ron and Ralph have told us that there has been a decline from where they sit at the number of deer vehicle collisions over the last few years.
Because the deer are smart now. They
Well,
actually,
that's exactly-
They've
that's
domesticated
exactly the
themselves.
point.
I'm, that's honest, that wasn't a off-color comment. They really
No,
will.
no, they
wait to
really
watch
are.
their car.
They're
Yeah.
learning to stop when they see or hear a car.
Deer are not.
Aren't you the one that
Yeah,
told us about,
as we'd like to
right,
think.
well,
we
no
stood there and
animal
waited
will.
and then crossed the
They
street?
do find out what predator and prey means,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Whether it's
That's correct.
vehicles or anything else, or my dog,
That's
right?
correct.
I
Mhm.
had roses and then I took my dog on vacation and then the roses went away,
Yes,
right? And now my dog is back
yes.
and, you know, for it's been a couple months, but my dog is back and now everything starts
They're
to bloom
struggling
again.
to come back up
That's right,
already.
because
Yep.
they understand that there's a 150-pound baby that they think is a
Well, see,
predator.
we don't need a deer committee, we just need to recognize and recommend to all of our residents that they simply get a mastiff and they.
It
Or if
will
you
solve
have
the
your code
problem.
enforcement not to feed a deer.
Yes,
First and
because we do that,
foremost,
right?
yes.
yes.
Yes, because if I feed the deer, my dog will just sit there and let them eat, so let me be clear about that.
How much-
Sorry, very quickly.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, Cindy would be like cuddling them. Yeah, I get it.
So I
Next.
recognize that we do not have our council member here with relation to education and school district. I have not heard word from her, so I don't know if it's something. Alex, have you heard from her?
no, I did not, have not.
Okay, so
Mhm.
I would just point out that we still are both awaiting kind of data and information from them, which we have requested and asked that you try and obtain. And also that as we head into the new election, recognizing that with the numbers that they've laid out, that we're gonna have new representatives on the school
Right.
board.
Right.
That I would suggest that whether via the conduit of the ad hoc committee or through management and government, that we have each of our representatives come and meet with us,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
kind of explain kind of
Mhm.
what they see in relation to Churchill,
Mhm.
so that we can have some time in Q&A with them. I don't think, just a personal opinion, you guys may have a differing opinion. I don't think it's in our best interest to bring them as a group. I haven't seen group dynamics that always work well. And so to that end, I would just point that out.
I don't know if you want me to add this in on something with the school district, but I got a letter from Michelle Collins up at the school. She's one of the principals up there. And she was asking for permission for a fireworks night because they're having on September 21st, a Thursday, 2023, between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Woodland Hills School District, in collaboration with Pitt School Business, will be hosting the Ambassador of the Republic of Botswana to the Kingdom of Belgium. And there's some other names that I'm not going to pronounce
Say it
them.
again.
So
Say
they
that
have,
again?
Say,
Is that
what
the
was that? The
ambassador
ambassador?
from Botswana to Belgium?
yeah, that's what it
So
says.
what's he
Stop
doing
it. The
here?
Ambassador
Stop
of the
it right
Republic
away.
of Botswana
I'm trying
To
to
the
look at the
king-
map in my head.
to the Kingdom of
Not-
Belgium.
Botswana,
So wait,
Belgium.
Is it, and I don't mean to sound trivial about this. I really do want to understand this really quickly. Is it Botswana's ambassador to Belgium or Belgium's ambassador to Botswana?
The ambassador of the Republic of
Okay, so
Botswana
Botswana's.
to the
ambassador-
Kingdom of
Right, so
Belgium.
Botswana's ambassador to
To
Belgium
Belgium.
Is gonna be here.
is
It's gonna
be
randomly
here.
in Churchill.
Passing through and then go.
They're gonna have a kickoff to the
Wow.
district's International Day. There will be a
Okay.
lot
Oh,
of.
okay, that makes
That
more
makes sense.
sense.
That makes more sense.
That makes
sense.
We're all like,
Why is he
You know what?
here?
It still
Right.
doesn't make sense to me. It may make sense to you. I'm
Maybe
trying to-
there's a
Well,
connection.
Maybe
trying
he
to
knows.
figure out-
somebody knows somebody,
There
that's
has
all
to
it
be.
is.
Or
Somebody
like-
knows somebody.
Who here has been to Botswana?
Nope,
No, I've been to Belgium.
Belgium.
I've not been to Belgium. I've been to Botswana.
I drank a Belgian
You
beer
have?
once.
Okay.
So what he's gonna do though, he's gonna moderate a panel discussion, or be a part of a panel discussion to really raise the issue of global citizenry.
That's right, yeah, right.
Part of
Okay,
the-
that makes a lot of.
In
Yeah,
the
there was
day,
more
there's
to that.
student
I just didn't-
activities. In the evening, they're inviting the community, and this is where you all fit in.
Yes.
To come and enjoy International Food Fair and
Ooh.
fireworks.
Now
Now
you're
you're
talking.
talking my.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is a community-wide invitation. They would like at the high school to have as many different people come and see and sample some of the International Food Fair. And again, under the banner of International Day and global citizenry and being a global citizen,
Okay,
it seems pretty neat.
that sounds cool.
Did they send you a flyer or something?
So I did request one. I haven't got the schedule
Okay.
yet because there was an open invitation, community-wide. So I expect, knowing Principal Mann, there'll be some Facebook posts
Right.
and some more information to follow. What they were trying to do with us last week, and started with the mayor, was get the permission for the
I
fireworks,
see.
Mhm.
which we gave them,
Yeah.
and so I expect the invitations to be
We
more
should
formal.
try to promote
Mark
that.
that
Should.
date,
That's-
Thursday,
September-
September 21st.
September
21st
twenty-first,
is a Thursday.
between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m.
Yeah, it's not clear to us what our invitation will be for
Right.
that, but you're definitely involved in the evening International Food Fest
Oh.
Yes.
Fair, which nobody
I
wants to miss.
Live music and dancing, art displays, and food from around the world.
I'm down for
And what do
food.
they eat in Botswana?
You in? I'm in.
Maybe we don't.
Actually,
Good
very,
works.
very good. But
Okay.
12, well.
The
again,
ambassador
I-
of Botswana.
No, I got it. I spent.
I
time
appreciate you
all-
asking. I
all
was like, wait a
through-
minute.
all through Sub-Saharan Africa, right?
All
It's a
I'm
big-
saying is my high school didn't have anything like that, and it would have been much cooler if it did.
Absolutely.
All I'm
I
saying
completely
is,
agree.
in the world of global citizenry and geopolitical kind of history, it is a very interesting space to have a sub-Saharan African ambassador to Belgium,
Yes.
recognizing the history of Belgium
Yeah.
within the Congolese space in the
Yes.
Congo.
Yes.
You know, one of the, I will have a long conversation on Belgium's version of colonialism anytime anyone would like to have it. But for now, Belgium's, the Botswana man, ambassador to Belgium. I'm excited to have.
That's cool.
Thank you for letting me put that in.
So, no, it's excellent, excellent, excellent. Love it. Love it. All right, we're gonna make our way through this. We're gonna make our way through this.
Seriously.
So zoning,
Seven.
ad hoc, anything we got?
It's just next week's the
What was the other
hearing.
tip?
We'll begin the public meeting with the hearing for the zoning ordinance, and then it's been properly advertised. And we'll get a chance to vote on it next Monday.
That second I went in this past Thursday, right?
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. We'll try and move us a little bit. Do you want to stop for a second on the ad hoc accessible play space, especially since I disappeared for some time in handling a conference, and we had left off after meeting with developers and trying to get together some teams of folks.
Yeah, we're hoping to restart that now that Labor Day's over. They still have to do due diligence, and they had some work to do over the last couple of weeks, so we're just gonna wait to get together again with them.
Okay, and as we had some conversation in that space, part of that was, putting together our team, their team, right?
Mhm.
To be able, because there's a couple different things going on with the conversation with the potential developer with regards to play space. One of those was, what was the developable space, right? They were very on board to ensure that space was made available. There was some question on how much and where, and kind of what was the best space. We had already talked with our team about what those options looked like, so we anticipated, quite frankly, their response. It was nothing shocking in that world. But we had asked that our kind of design team and their design team get together and talk about what the real possibilities are, so that we are able to kind of move forward with kind of more funding spaces
Yeah.
and saying at a more concrete level, here's what we're looking at. I don't know what happened in the last probably week and a half, 10 to 12
Nothing.
days.
Well,
That doesn't
We
sound like,
provided for them the funding, for lack of a better word, matrix, giving them an idea of the different opportunities if collaboration
right.
were to be achievable.
To
where we
that
could move
end,
forward.
to that end, I wanted from them almost more than I wanted to give, not that it was problematic, right? Or not that I'm trying to be secretive, because it's not. I mean, as we kind of talked about, kind of, we can look at what we think our buckets. We need to hear from them what they think our space is. We put those two together to find kind of where we can then go
And to
to.
put things in perspective, when I talked to them recently, they were still trying to finalize what Pittsburgh-based legal firm that they
Gotcha.
were going to hire.
Oh,
Very, very helpful.
And so there was a couple of,
Yeah.
when I meant due diligence, things they needed to
No,
accomplish.
I got you.
which
Sure.
I got you.
Are positive, because I think who they're looking at is gonna be good for us no matter what. But they've got to work through some things as well.
I'm kind of an unrelated, because this is listed as accessible play space. We're kind of talking a little bit on potential development space, just to kind of
Yes.
be kind of, front in that. I do think that there was a very kind of positive, just
Yes.
general sense in our meeting with them. We have all experienced a number of different people who have come forward. We're not, and I say this to remind not people at this table, but someone who will later watch this recording, right? Whoever it might be. We are not the property owner. We are not the developer. If they choose to come to us, it is at their choice. We cannot make them come here. We cannot force them into doing things, right? It would be very bad. Let me say this, my solicitor would be angry with us. Our solicitor, if we tried to force developers to do things a particular way because it benefited Churchill and went outside the current zoning structure, for instance. So all of these conversations, when they're willing to come to us, are because we have created a positive atmosphere, right? And they have made their own decision that it's in their benefit to come to us. So I say that before I say that they have, with all the other ones that we've kind of seen, and this is just one more in the cycle of will we ever get this place done? They have been somebody who the people they're talking about working with, the way they're talking about doing it,
Yes.
does seem to be a little more kind of on point in what you would expect from someone who is a serious developer.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
it's fair to say.
Yes.
And I can't really go any further than that, but I think that's the extent.
I
of
would
it.
just say this, there are certain, in my own mind, there are certain benchmarks as you go down this road. And the first one is, does it look as though we can work cooperatively? That they're really interested in talking to us, we talking to them. That benchmark was hit as far as I was concerned in our early interaction with them. So that, to me, was a positive sign.
Okay, Mr. Mayor,
What do I have today?
that's our question for you, sir.
Well, you know what? I really don't have anything to talk about. Although to Matt, when I
Set a
did,
needle on the record.
I did find the speed sign downstairs, so Ralph can get see if he can get the battery for it. I believe there's two of them, but I found one of them. So Ralph should see it when he see, I put it right in the walkway down. He'll see it.
He trips over it.
Just
They wanna work
for
with them.
clarification, that's we had some small mobile units that we had been using in in some different neighborhoods where they put up some posts and had been moved around, frequently. And
Yep.
at some point, the batteries died. And now that we have some of that additional funding from the grant funding, we can, budget to replace those batteries and put those back in operation. So.
Answer.
And the
good.
one post that was on Thornberry got
Thank you, Fred.
knocked
Thank you.
over in a car accident, so that'll have to be replaced.
You should have speeded.
The other thing, just an update, since I won't be here next Monday for the meeting, I'll be out of town on vacation. I've reached a point where I've passed out 400 welcome packets to the residents in the borough. So that's like a little milestone for me.
Yes.
And Ashley right now is working on some more.
Okay.
So, when I get back, we'll go, get back on the trail, passing those out.
Well, and I know you created a letter too, so there's some residents that, maybe don't answer the door or are busy or aren't there, whatever the case may be. So if they don't answer, then the mayor leaves them like, hey, I try to reach you, get some information.
So he doesn't
And I-
keep going
So he doesn't
back
keep
on,
going back.
because
Right.
he has done that in the past where he's gone back
Oh, I
at
know.
2, 3,
Yeah.
4
Restraining
times.
order.
and say, Right,
You're
right.
the best,
You've
you're
done
the
your
best.
due diligence.
Well, I
we
did-
need a
I did
letter.
give her- I gave Ashley something to mail out the other day.
Second my ring.
I had like, I put a
Yeah.
little tick mark down in the bottom, like I got 6 check marks down there, 6
Yeah,
times
that's-
I've not been,
That's too much.
you know, I think I'm
No,
gonna
it's too
limit
much.
myself
Done
to
above and
2.
beyond.
That's a way above.
If I don't
and
catch you
beyond,
after
yeah.
2.
Yeah,
getting
It wasn't meant to be.
Or there is a
Yeah,
restraining
it's-
order.
So when you say 400, is that residents for the past few years or what?
Since I
mean-
started doing this, which is back when I became mayor in 2019
Mhm.
or whatever it
That's still
was,
awesome.
when we started doing that.
It's still awesome.
Okay.
Sure
And it
is.
went from like a couple pieces of paper, then
Mhm.
it went to this big metamorphosis. And the
Yes.
communications committee chopped it all down, you know,
Right.
weeded out the
Uniformed.
things we don't
Yeah,
need,
that's nice.
made it a little bit more readable, so
No, it's a nice packet.
it is, yeah.
And our
So
residents should know, even if they aren't new, if they can go on our website.
Yep.
They can see the whole thing
there's that
right
little
there.
code
It's
cube
very
and-
There's a
comprehensive.
QR code. We also had them at Community Day and we had
We had, right,
residents like, oh,
right.
I'm an old
Right.
resident, but I still want this
It's
information.
Everything you'd
picked it
ever
up.
want to know about Churchill.
Yep.
No,
So
you're right.
what year are we talking at the start of this?
What year started what?
In
Well,
terms of-
this is
I'm
my
asking for-
7th year.
So
Yes.
I want you to consider something in that too, right? That in a 7-year period, we're talking about a third
Yeah.
of our population has moved out,
Yeah.
right? On the one hand, right, we're an aging
Aging.
population and that means that we're getting new families in. But that's also not the full third of the population that's moving out, right? Not that I want to be Debbie Downer to the party or story, right? But the reality is that we lose a good chunk of our population who are school-age people, right? Have school-age children and who move out.
Yep.
And so to have a third, it's actually more than a third, quite frankly,
Mhm.
of our population transition out of Churchill, not just a third of our population transition into Churchill, is a concerning space. And one that I think we would be remiss if we solely looked at it through the lens of who's moving in and didn't really do a deep dive at some point on why we're moving out at that level. So I would just bring that to the table.
And from what I see,
That's
people
what
who
I
are
just.
single people.
I mean, you can't hear that and miss that, right? Like, we know.
Yes,
No,
these
yes.
you're right. No, you're
Yes,
right.
we're right. Yes.
We know.
Well,
I know I bring no joy in,
Yeah.
I thought you were sunshine and rainbows day. What happened?
You know
the issue
what?
is Data.
I haven't
Data
slept
is
in
in.
like 2 weeks straight, so I got some sleep over the weekends. It'll take me a little bit more, I'll be right back to sunshine and rainbows. all the
And
time.
somewhere I just read, that our population was a few years ago, I don't remember where I saw it. It was 5,000. There were
Yeah.
5,000 people in our bar. We're down to 3,000 people.
Yeah, well, we're
Look
actually
around us.
sub 3,000. We'd like to hang out
Around
at
us.
3,000 because it
Yeah.
feels better,
Yeah.
right?
We're rounding up.
You know, line of demarcations make us, feel a little better. We did just dip below that. You know, I mean, we could, but we can attribute that. I mean, we recognize that, Westinghouse left,
Yeah,
right?
that's what
And
happened.
that cascaded our population
Mhm.
because all of that employment left with it. And so, like, I get that, like, I can wrap my head around that, right? I can't wrap my head around our current losses, right? That's the part that we need to, and I don't know what this looks like. I pose this to you all as the smarter people at the table. But
Perception of Woodland Hills, Jay. Perception of Woodland Hills. I will tell you that people who lived in Blackridge, who are young couples, when as soon as their kids were school age,
yes, right. I mean, trust me,
Yep.
Garrett Drive, we have more kids on a single street than anywhere in this
No,
borough,
you do.
right?
but perception of Woodland Hills.
we-
I'm not saying it
Right.
is, I'm just saying perception's reality.
Right.
Well,
We can dance around it, but that's,
with-
that's,
and I realize this is a whole giant conversation, so
Yeah.
I'll be super brief about it. But I think we spend a lot of time talking about perception versus reality, and I'm much more in the reality of reality,
I am too.
right? So the first thing is,
there are difficulties that are not being addressed. There's performance issues that require bigger spaces than simply even money, quite frankly. You know, it's holistic
yeah.
issues that aren't being funded. There are state funding levels that have to be addressed. There are, you know, I've spent so much time on the behavioral space to address that and move it, I mean, program after program after program, right? But what does it mean for us and how do we navigate this space? And that's where I have failed to come up with an answer. And so, and I've done a good 10 years of trying. So I look to others at this table who I believe are substantially smarter than I am to start to think about that on a plan of action level that says, what are our real options both with the district, right? You know, how do we partner? How do we not partner? How do we interface? You know, how do we not? I don't know, but I turn it to you all because I've done a decade of it and I don't got it. Okay.
I think one of the first things we need is a way to get good data.
Yeah,
So let's
exactly.
just talk about how we do that.
I'm
and
still-
start from there.
Well,
Still
you should
trying.
ask for it. Yeah,
Still
go ahead.
trying.
Yeah, still trying.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Mayor? I'm
Nope.
sorry.
No, that's it for me.
Good.
Yes, I did. Oh, it's a long one today. I haven't been, I'm not on my.
Should Diane get back in charge? No, that's so much better.
You know what? Yes.
Second,
Well,
All in
is
favor?
that on a
Aye.
motion?
Yeah, what are we?
I
Listen to
am-
the motion, it's a rare borough code provision, that allows me to do that one time a year.
I am more than open. I will second. How's that for a play?
Let's talk about content.
Okay, we have updates in adjournment, and I think we did the zoning, so anything else? People, anything important? All right, then, I would motion for an adjournment, understanding that we're gonna head into an executive session to deal with some contract issues, labor, and that's that. So,
So moved.
all right, perfect. Thank you for letting me get out of that in a proper manner. We'll shut that.